Namaskar. Welcome to one more session. So today in this session we are going to understand what is a national strategy and roadmap for development of rural tourism in India. This is the initiative towards Atmanirbhar Bharat which we have discussed in the previous session. So let us understand what is this national strategy roadmap. The first slide, which clearly shows the entire slide, what is the national strategy roadmap for development of rural tourism, an initiative towards Atmanirbhar Bharat. So this starts with introduction, SWOT analysis, vision, mission and objective, state assessment and ranking of rural tourism, digital technologies for rural tourism, developing the clusters for rural tourism and marketing support for rural tourism, then capacity building for rural tourism, then governance and institutional framework. This is the broad outline of the entire discussion. The national strategy and roadmap for development of rural tourism. It aims at prioritization of rural tourism at the national level. It further aims at the convergence of various schemes addressing issues such as poverty, empowerment of women, strengthening the economic status of the rural people. This strategy is based on overarching the theme of sustainable and responsible tourism, which will be supported by the following strategic pillars, which we are calling it as strategic pillars. What are those? Benchmarking of state policies and the best practices, digital technologies and platforms for rural tourism, developing clusters for rural tourism, marketing support for rural tourism, then capacity building of the stakeholders, then governance and institutional framework. Let us see what they are. The first thing they are going to talk about SWOT analysis, SWOT analysis. This is a very important tool which can be used for anything in life. That's SW. S stands for strength, W stands for weaknesses, O stands for opportunities, T stands for threat. So you can do the SWOT analysis of your own local village, of your own local heritage spot. So you should understand what are the strengths of that location, what are the weaknesses around it, and what are the opportunities that you can plan for it, future planning, and what are the potential threats. So that is why SWOT analysis is very important, my dear friend. I hope most of you are aware of it, but still I am sharing about it. So let's go and understand what is SWOT analysis with respect towards rural tourism. What are the strengths? Rural tourism in India has the following strengths. Indian villages have unparalleled culture, craft, music, dance and heritage to offer the visitors. Next one, expansion of road infrastructure has made the most of the rural areas accessible, well developed agricultural and farms to provide stay facilities and experiences, well developed facilities and experiences, beautiful climatic conditions and biodiversity. The next one is, apart from the mainland rural areas, India has coastal, Himalayan, desert, forest and tribal areas amongst others for tourists. Then India has a huge potential for related areas such as Ayurveda, ecotourism, nature reserves and wildlife tourism. These are the potential strengths as far as rural tourism is concerned. Now what are the weaknesses? Lack of prioritization for rural tourism at the state level and national level. What do you mean when you say lack of prioritization? Your concerned state department, is it focused on promoting rural tourism or not? That check you have to do it, my dear friends. You have to do it. Not only at the state level, you have to do it at the municipal level, you have to do it at the Gram Panchayat level. Are they prioritizing it or not? If not, you take the lead. If they are doing it, go and cooperate with them. Give them better suggestions and ideas. Then poor profiling of rural product offerings. Again, when you are, what are the best products that you can offer? If the profiling is not done properly, if you are not taking into cognizance the fact what are the best things that you can offer to the tourist will not come. Then comes poor tourism support infrastructure, including the ICT in rural areas. This is a very key aspect that we need to understand. Poor tourism support infrastructure, including ICT in rural areas, is the information and communication technology tools, because lack of, sometimes electricity is a problem or the fiber optic network is a problem. But right now the government of India is spreading the entire thing, electrification as well as ICT, the fiber optic network across the country at a very fast pace. And it has reached most of the remotest places. The classic example what I can quote for you is, in the remotest part of the country we will definitely have a post office, and in that post office, most of the post offices have been computerized. Definitely they have been given the support of internet and everything. Yes, electricity is an issue, but that everything you cannot expect government to do it. The local people also should do it because you need the services there. If only you can go in for solar rooftop model in all the essential services in your local hospital, local post offices. Very, very important to see that electricity is always given. It is already provided there. The next thing is the lack of tourism awareness and skills in the rural areas, then poor resource allocation and lack of inclusive planning and community involvement. The last word is very important, is community involvement. Most of the people are not involved in promoting their place as a potential tourist destination. How should we motivate them? First thing, let us understand them. They have a generally the cynical view saying what is there in our place. There is nothing there to promote. Let the tourists come and go. Again, as I said, my dear friends, most important thing is the attitude. The combination to promote rural tourism is ASK, attitude, skills and knowledge, customer service, hospitality. These are few of the important pillars in which we can promote rural tourism aggressively. Let us go to the next slide. What are the opportunities in front of rural tourism? The rural tourism offers a wide range of opportunities: creation of jobs, retention of jobs and new business opportunities. Rural tourism can lead the way for sustainable and responsible tourism, sustainable exploitation of untapped rural culture and heritage offerings, unspoiled natural and rural tranquility, indigenous knowledge systems, promoting agri-tourism, promoting eco-tourism, promoting adventure tourism, promoting leisure tourism, promoting marine tourism, volunteer tourism, rural tourism circuits. See the huge, definitely the most 12 opportunities are listed here. I am sure it will be much more when we go down to the location. Then comes the threats. Rural tourism also faces the following threats. One, lack of reliable data and statistics, lack of well planned approach, systematic approach, documented approach is very, very important. You should have a proper flowchart design. As the tourist enters, where will he go? What will he do? How many days he is required to spend? In case of emergency, what is the backup plan? Which is the nearest hospital? Which is the nearest ambulance? Who is the nearest panel doctor you have got? At least to give immediate emergency response. Let's hope it doesn't get into that. Then he continues his journey. What kind of food he is having? What kind of precautions you will tell your tourist? What kind of food he should have? Coming from the place where he comes. If he is coming from whichever country he is coming from, you should also have a basic idea. You should do a proper homework, especially the host, to understand where is this person coming from, to understand their culture also. It's a beautiful interface of intercultural relations. Then comes environmental degradation, social and cultural influences. These are the threats that we have towards rural tourism. Let's go to the next one. Who are the stakeholders? I need not emphasize, you already know. For our discussion, let me tell you. The promotion and development of rural tourism will involve a diverse set of stakeholders whose role will be crucial for the success of the strategy. The key stakeholders are central ministries, state governments, panchayat raj institutions, industry, non-governmental organizations and local community. All have to have a proper cohesion, coordination and support. State governments. State governments have a number of schemes for development of rural areas, including tourism, related infrastructure, rural culture, heritage and handicrafts. State governments have the primary role in creating momentum for rural tourism by formulating suitable policies and supporting rural tourism projects. The entire onus to promote your own local area rests with your state government. You have to go and speak and discuss with the concerned Ministry of Tourism. Speak to the tourism minister of your state and kindly discuss with them what are the elaborate plans, how you can contribute as a volunteer. Then comes Panchayat Raj institutions. Panchayat Raj institutions have a strong influence on local communities and their support is vital for the success of rural tourism. Village Panchayat and other institutions have to be consulted and involved in the preparation of plans for developing rural tourism in their villages. Panchayats can help in coordination, facilitation, protection of natural resources, promotion of socio-economic development, provision of infrastructure. You will receive a lot of support if you take them into confidence, the local village people. The community participation is important, which we have been emphasizing from so many sessions. Now, technically, what are the vision, mission and objectives? To leverage India's rural heritage in creating a vibrant and responsible tourism segment by creating engaging rural experiences, thereby promoting indigenous jobs and preserving local culture and heritage. Then, to facilitate the enabling environment comprising of government, industry, NGO, community for development and promotion of rural tourism in the country. What are the objectives? To identify strategies for development of rural tourism and stimulate job creation. To bring synergy and convergence in the central and state programs for development and promotion of rural tourism in the country. Next one, to facilitate coordination of rural tourism development initiatives amongst relevant stakeholders. To create a platform to share knowledge of the best practices, development opportunities and challenges in the rural areas for tourism development. I insist on this point once again, my dear friends. To create a platform to share knowledge of best practices, development opportunities and challenges in the rural areas for tourism development. This needs to be shared with one state with other, one NGO with another NGO, one voluntary organization with another voluntary organization, within the state and outside the state also. To identify and recommend strategic areas and clusters of tourism development in rural areas within the sector. This cluster tourism is what is going to take Indian tourism sector to the next level, because people want value for money. They do not want to visit one location and come back. They would like to have a comprehensive. They want to experience the location totally. What are we planning in that regard? That is what this entire national strategy roadmap is we are discussing about. What are the key strategic pillars? In order to develop rural tourism in the country, the strategy focuses on the following key pillars. Model policies and best practices for rural tourism, digital technologies and platforms for rural tourism, developing clusters for rural tourism, marketing support, capacity building of stakeholders, governance and institutional framework. What are the national and global best practices for rural tourism? Few points. There are several success stories in rural tourism in the country which will be documented as a part of state assessment and ranking. Many other countries have also developed successful rural tourism models. The ministry will study and benchmark these models and practices and prepare a toolkit for replication and adoption of such practices by various states and rural tourism destinations. The toolkit provides a broad view of rural tourism and steps required to plan and develop community-based rural tourism initiatives. The next one is public, private and community partnership model, very important one. Here I would request the nearest corporate company or a multinational company or any public sector unit, the concerned bank also can be involved here in promoting. How? Let us see. There is a need to develop effective models for public, private and community partnership for rural tourism based on a successful case study in the country and globally. Community partnership is a key to inclusive, sustainable and responsible tourism. Public institutions are required to fund infrastructure, banking I am talking about, hygiene and safety, and the private sector can bring in the requisite business dynamism. Efficient management and investment and marketing strategy for long-term partnership models have to be evolved. The ministry will work with the states to implement successful models for private sector and community partnership. Next point, state assessment and ranking as a tool for capacity building. How is it done? The Ministry of Tourism will conduct ranking of the states on rural tourism with the key objective to foster competitiveness and encourage states to work proactively towards developing rural tourism with the overarching objective of promoting sustainable and responsible tourism. It will be implemented as a capacity development exercise to encourage mutual learning among all the states and provide support in policy formulation and implementation. The ranking exercise will be carried out with a professional support and through independent experts from various institutions with government and private. The Ministry of Tourism will provide necessary training in the officials and other stakeholders, handhold the states for the participation in the exercise. The role of digital technologies in tourism. Digital technologies and platforms offer global access to consumers and allow service providers to enhance the development of tourism sector and its competitive standards. Peer reviews and other forms of user-generated content, UGC, user-generated content facilitated by digital platforms have become the most important sources of travel information globally, more important than the tourism boards and traditional outlets. Digital technologies and platforms provide new opportunities for rural entrepreneurs to improve their market access and financial inclusion, Digital technologies allow the rural entrepreneurs to overcome the geographic disadvantages and lack of other marketing channels by utilizing the power of internet, cloud computing, social media. Very important. However, rural communities have limited knowledge on how to take advantage of digital platforms and mitigate risks, either constrained by lack of understanding or know-how and resources. They are not able to leverage the digital tools to grow their tourism. Next, facilitating adoption of digital technologies for rural platform. The government will facilitate adoption of digital technologies and platforms for rural tourism through various measures, enabling the broadband internet infrastructure to rural areas having tourism potential, capacity building of various segments such as accommodations including homestays, farm stays, transport operators, rural attractions, tour operators. Capacity building will include creating awareness and benefits of digitalization and providing digital skills for the rural community. Providing digital skills for rural communities itself is a major project, especially for a lot of NGOs, voluntary organizations. Need for clusters for rural tourism. There is a need to identify suitable clusters of 5 to 7 villages in the close vicinity of promoting rural tourism. A cluster will offer more tourist attractions than rural tourism projects of individual villages separated by long distances. Further, marketing of the local products of a group of villages can be facilitated by holding craft bazaars or HAAT, HAATs. The clusters can also converge other programs for skills, capacity building, marketing, etc. Then comes the next one, identification. How do we identify what are the clusters for tourism? Important point, please listen. The state should identify the clusters of villages having high potential for tourism development. There are several themes around which rural tourism can be developed in different parts of the country. The themes can broadly include local crafts and cuisine, folk music, dance, puppet shows, theatre and street dramas, agri-tourism, organic farming, then farm stays, herbal products, tea estates, yoga and meditation centers, wellness centers, lakes, wetlands and eco zones around the village, rural sports and cultural events, national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, unique tribal culture, proximity to existing tourism circuits, the connecting to the next tourism circuit. So that is why it can be a pilgrimage tourism, it can be a wellness tourism, it is linked to the wildlife tourism, everything can be interlinked. That is what we are saying when we are trying to do about a cluster in the promotion of rural tourism. The process of identification of rural tourism clusters or destinations should be broad-based, involving stakeholders from government, industry, NGOs, rural communities and local businesses, local entrepreneurs supporting farm stays, handicraft shops and other tourism products and experiences must also be consulted. Ministry of Rural Development is implementing Urban Mission, that is Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, which we have discussed in the previous one, where a cluster of villages are identified which have the potential for growth, have economic drivers and drive locational competitive advantages. These clusters are called Rurban, R-U-R-B-A-N, Rurban. These clusters are being strengthened with the required amenities with the convergence of various schemes of the government and a critical gap funding. We call it as CGF. Excuse me, provided under this mission. The next one is the identified urban clusters may be examined for their potential of tourism based on the activities identified above, and shortlisted clusters can be taken for development and promotion of rural tourism. Ministry of Rural Development will provide the necessary details for prioritizing the tourism urban clusters. Ministry of Rural Development can also contribute under MGNREGA, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Assurance, in creating assets, underwater conservation, plantation and other such works. Ministry of Agriculture has also developed organic agriculture areas under Paramparagat Krishi Vikas Yojana, PKVI, and Mission Organic Value Chain Development in Northeast region, which may be examined. In addition to that, urban clusters, other clusters of 5 to 7 villages can be identified by the state governments having the potential for tourism. The state governments will prioritize the identified clusters to be taken up for the development of rural tourism. Now, what are they saying here? Development plan for the rural tourism cluster, which may be called as physical infrastructure, as I told you previously, the same thing, the digital infrastructure, physical infrastructure, especially drinking water, sanitation facilities. Digital infrastructure, we are talking about internet, Wi-Fi, CCTV. Social infrastructure, especially waste management, security and safety for the tourist, which is very, very crucial. Then tourism products and and activities, like I said, typically handicrafts and other areas which can be used, tribal products, where we can see that we can increase their period of stay. The whole concept is, when the tourist enters a village, let us increase his period of stay. If he is coming for few hours, can he stay for overnight? If he is staying for overnight, can he extend his stay for 2 or 3 days? That is what makes him attractive. That is what we should make our location attractive, our village attractive. India needs smart villages. Agreed? Local entrepreneurship, definitely very, very important and critical role. We have to empower the local youth, local women. Entrepreneurship we will be discussing in the next sessions. Marketing and promotion, as I said, marketing and promotions of the clusters of the rural tourism destination is an essential part of the development plan. As I said, marketing, again it starts with AIDA principle: attention, interest, desire and action. Capacity building, yes, you have to do a lot of hand holding activities, trainings, workshops, so that is where the real strength of the area will surface. Let it surface from the local people. We have to do the hand holding part, that is it. There is a need to build the capacity of the stakeholders involved in rural tourism. Who are they? Local communities, tourism service providers, tourism industry, especially unorganized sector, NGOs who are working on the ground, travelers, relevant central and state government agencies. What are the areas for capacity building? Broadly, built heritage and maintenance, hygiene and basic service standards, community participation, special experiences or value added services, environmental impact, destination sustainability, responsible tourism, sales and marketing. All these things gives you how to build the capacity also. Like I told you in one of the previous sessions, we very closer to on outskirts of Hyderabad, we got a particular temple called Chaya Someshwara temple, where the Shivling which is there, which is always there at the bottom, it is not at the ground level, it is at the lower level, and the temple is designed in such a way that there is a shadow there 365 days, 24/7, there is a shadow which falls on the Shivling. That is called Chaya. Chaya is shadow, Chaya Someshwara temple, right? So if you see that, forget about, maybe there are rationalists are there or somebody, I am not talking of religious angle, talk about optics, physics, optics. That itself is it's an optical marvel if you have to visit that location to understand it. State nodal agency. Each state and union territory may also designate a state nodal agency which can assist the state Department of Tourism in the promotion and development of rural tourism. The state nodal agency will assist the state tourism department in implementation, collaboration with the national nodal agency, replicating national and global best practices, framing the state policies for rural tourism, identification of rural tourism clusters and preparation of development plans, facilitating adoption of digital technologies for rural tourism and formulation of the state schemes for development of rural tourism. What is the action plan? The Ministry of Tourism will prepare a detailed national action plan in consultation with relevant ministries, state government and industry stakeholders for the implementation of the strategy. The action plan will be reviewed and monitored in accordance with the laid down governance mechanism. State governments will prepare state specific policies and action plans for development of rural tourism. That is what we need to work on. National Nodal Agency, same thing which I have told you, but broadly I will just share the points. National Nodal Agency will prepare and assist Ministry on preparation of detailed action plan and implementation of the strategy, identify national and global best practices, benchmarking it, capacity building, toolkits, guidelines, formulation of dedicated scheme to support the development of rural tourism and any other support that is required. So these are the important things which we need to understand. The nodal agency will set up appropriate structures and professional staffing. Most important aspect is professional staffing. When he has used the word staffing, what do you mean by staffing? Right person in the right job at the right place in the right time. That is staffing. The person should have the right attitude. The person should be passionate about rural tourism. The person should be very passionate to develop his own village or her own village, to empower their local, our brothers and sisters there. Not just for the revenue part of it. You should take pride in developing your own village, my village. This will also act as a repository of knowledge for other practices, for creating different modules, contextualizing as per the local locations, developing the standards towards responsible and sustainable tourism, most important protection of environment and the biodiversity, supporting the local community based tourism in an endeavor to make communities resilient bounce back in the event of any of the natural disasters that can occur. We have to learn from them. In case of any natural disasters that has come, how did they bounce back? That itself will create a separate case study by itself. Then demonstrate the collaboration pays more than competition, pool purchasing. All these things will create at national, state and village level. Thank you very much for joining this session. I hope you liked it. Give your feedback in the session. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.